Welcome to Talking with Greenhills. Today we have a very special program. We're going to tell some stories today because the well-loved, long-served Chief of Police of the Village of Greenhills is getting ready to retire. Thank you so much for coming in.
Well, actually, I'm not retiring. I'm getting promoted.
Okay.
Promotion to full-time grandpa.
Oh, I like that.
It's going to be my best job ever.
You've been practicing for this.
I have.
You have some prior experience. Yes,
I do.
That is excellent.
And I've been hired, so, it's a good thing.
Okay, so it's not, we already know you have this position. Okay. Well, in light of this promotion to full-time grandpa, I wanted to take some time to tell some stories and find out about your journey along the way. You came to Greenhills from being chief somewhere else, and how did you even come into the field of police work?
Just by happenstance. My father was a police officer. He was a lieutenant most of the time that I was growing up, but he had an inside job. He was like the administrative lieutenant. He was the traffic lieutenant. So he worked Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Most times he wore a uniform, but sometimes he'd wear a suit. So I didn't really think of him as like the cop on the street. So flash forward to my early days in college, and there was a problem on a patrol shift, and the police chief called him in and said, I'd like you to go back on the street and straighten this out. So he became a shift commander on a patrol shift in Hamilton, which meant he worked out in a cruiser, supervised officers, and made the difficult calls. So I asked him, freshman in college, I said, hey, Dad, can I come ride with you? And he said, no, police chief doesn't allow riders. Well, I don't know if you remember being of freshman college age, but you kind of think you know everything. So I got out, way before computers, I got out my little manual typewriter, typed a letter to the chief of police asking permission to ride with my dad. I got back my same letter, down at the bottom was scrawled, permission granted, and the chief had his initials. So my dad chewed me out for violating the chain of command. That was the first lesson I learned. And then I got to ride with him. Well, my dad, growing up, was one of those kind of guys that if the speed limit was 35, he went 25. He was very quiet. He was an imposing, white-haired, very commanding presence type guy, but he was quiet. And I never really saw him ever get excited. So when I rode with him, we went to a Frisch's restaurant, and this was back when they had car hops. This is dating me.
Okay.
So we're out in the back of the restaurant and had a big boy and whatever, and an armed robbery call came in. And he looks over at me and he said, you're going to have to stow all your food. He said, we're taking off. So we're driving down Neyland Boulevard in Hamilton, which runs along the river behind Miami University. And the old guy's going 80. I didn't know he knew how to drive like that. And we got to this call, and he's taking charge, and he's giving orders. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was already in college. I was on a pre-law course or path. I was going to be a lawyer. I took the police cadets test. At that time, Hamilton had police cadets. I was 18. And I was lucky enough that I came out number 1. My mother cried. She says, I've worried for 30 years. I don't want to worry for 30 more. My dad was disappointed. He was afraid I wouldn't ever finish my college degree. And I promised him, I said, when I get this job, I promise you I'll get my degree. So for the first probably 3 years after I was a cadet and then eventually promoted to police officer, I finished up my degree part-time. But I joined the Hamilton Police Department. I was a patrolman, worked the streets for about 10 years. I got promoted to detective. I did that for 4 years. Got promoted to sergeant, did that for 4 years, got promoted to lieutenant. And at that time I was thinking, I don't know whether I really should look at the next step or not. I actually even interviewed at a couple smaller jurisdictions to be a police chief. Well, the police chief unexpectedly retired in Hamilton. I took the test. There was a number of us that took it, and I got the highest score. So I became police chief. I was police chief there for 14 years. It's a big city, high crime load, very, very busy. So 14 years as police chief in Hamilton was like 40 years in dog years. It was a long time. I was exhausted when it came time to retire. I became retirement age. I was in my mid-50s and never gave a thought to what I was going to do next. So I actually went to a local hardware store and asked them if they needed help to stock shelves. They said, we're full up right now, check back later. Well, at that time, my wife, who grew up in Greenhills, said, I heard the Greenhills police chief's job is open. I said, no, I don't think it is. Well, I checked into it and it was. So I cold called Yvonne Kovac, and we met. I interviewed for the job. I was offered the position. And it's unbelievable to me, Dana, that was 10 years ago, because it's gone by like 10 minutes. And it's been a great ride. I've really enjoyed it. When I got here, I thought, this is a community that really needs community-oriented policing. So we started a lot of programs. You've covered a lot of them, cookies with the cops, cooking with the cops. We like to eat a lot.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, bike rodeos, all kinds of events that we've had so much fun. When I go to a community meeting now after 10 years, I just about almost always know everybody that comes by first name. And that's the kind of community that I think is so special in the 21st century. And one of the things that I'm very excited about, Yvonne allowed me to participate in the selection process for my replacement. So I get to make sure that this very special place is going to get a special police chief. So I'm very excited about Jim Howarth, who will be our new chief, and I know that he's going to hit the ground running and make me look like an old fuddy-duddy. So I'm really excited that that's going to happen.
You're joking about that, making you look like an old fuddy-duddy, but you came
I'm old. I'm way past retirement age.
That part's not the joke. This is the second time you're retiring. Is this one going to stick?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready now. It's, we've only all got so much chronological age on this earth, and I'm getting to the point where I have young grandchildren who are just the love of my life. They're so delightful. And at this point in time, they enjoy hanging out with both of us. And I know that'll end when they become teenagers, so I want to take advantage of the time that I have. I've always been a model train enthusiast, so I have a layout under construction. I never have enough time to work on it, so that'll kind of solve that. And my little granddaughters are so excited about helping Grandpa run the wires under the table, because they can fit under there easier than I can. So we're going to have a great time.
How old are they now?
4 and 6.
Oh, that's perfect to get under there. Perfect.
Yeah, I'll do the soldering, but they can run the wire.
We'll have to talk when it's time to do some Christmas train footage. Or
Absolutely,
like that.
absolutely.
That would be exciting.
Yeah, well, I have actually a 3-part train layout. One is Tarrytown, named after my oldest daughter. The other is Leoland, which is a bigger city because my daughter spent a lot of time in school in Chicago. And then we have Patty's Peak, named after my wife, which has the mountain in the back. And then underneath all that is Christmastown, which has the Polar Express running.
So is this a permanent setup?
Oh, absolutely.
That sounds so
For
great.
all the years that I was Hamilton Police Chief and just didn't have time to work on it, my wife would go down to the basement, shake her head, and say, what I could have done with this space.
And you talked about being, replaced by someone younger, and but you brought a lot of city skills to the village of Greenhills.
I've always said that Greenhills was the benefit of all the thousands of dollars that Hamilton spent on me training me to be a police chief. And they did train, and we believe in law enforcement field that training is so important. Yeah. So we do a lot of that in Greenhills. We are up to snuff with any agency around here. In our training, Lieutenant Ann Ward handles it just remarkably well. And I was trained very well in Hamilton, so training is so important in law enforcement to make sure that our officers do the right thing. The job in the 47 years that I've been involved in it has gotten increasingly more complex, more difficult. But I think that the officers that we're hiring today are up to the challenge. I'm amazed because nationally the statistics are that agencies can't find good candidates to be police officers. In Greenhills, we've been incredibly lucky, and we have a staff that I would put up against any staff of police officers. They're good people.
I know we've talked about this. You have staff that has been there a while, so that you have some depth coming in behind. You also have recently brought on several new officers.
We have
got to start that training from the beginning there.
Well, Lieutenant Ward has been there almost 30 years, if not over. But our 2 sergeants are a real dichotomy. We have Tony Patton, who is the most senior officer on the department. He has well over 30 years of experience. The joke about Sergeant Patton is that he not only knows where everyone lives in Greenhills, he knows who lived there before the people that live there now. So he has just an incredible knowledge of the community, an incredible knowledge of law enforcement and the laws. And then we have Carl Holbrook, who is our other sergeant, who is young, very bright, and he is what they would call, I guess in technical terms, an up-and-comer. So I think that he has a great future ahead of him. So as the people with more experience, like me, retire out, I think we're going to have good people coming up the ranks. And what is really important to me, Greenhills is such a special community. I feel assured that they're going to be blessed with a good police department for some years to come. The blessing that the residents of Greenhills have is our low crime rate. And that works for them in several ways. Number one, they're safer in their homes because we just don't have rampant crime. And there's a reason for that, and that's because we do an incredible job of patrolling and spending a lot of time in our community. But the second thing that is a blessing for them is that we have maybe 6 or 7 calls a day, maybe 7 or 8 crimes a month. That was 5 minutes in Hamilton, where I came from. So it's a very big difference. But what that means on a practical basis is that even if we have a theft case, which in a bigger city isn't even going to get looked at because there's too many rapes, robberies, burglaries, murders, and other violent crime. But in Greenhills, we can actually do the follow-up on that and come to a conclusion. I remember one particular case where Sergeant Patton followed up on just some thefts from vehicles, and people are sometimes careless and leave their vehicles unlocked. Please don't do that. But they'll leave valuables in place. And what a lot of drug addicts will do is just scour the neighborhoods, try doors to see if they're unlocked, and it's an easy theft. So what occurred in Greenhills was that Sergeant Patton did a very thorough investigation, checked pawn shops, found where some of the articles had been pawned, was able to interview and locate the suspects and make arrests. And this group had hit everywhere from here to Blue Ash. We were the only jurisdiction that made an arrest. The other thing I'd like to mention is, in addition to our patrol staff, we're extremely fortunate to have 2 very talented and experienced investigators. Brian Johnston has been with us since 2001, and Brian has investigated everything from narcotics to other felony crimes, and he's very talented and skilled at what he does. He can process a crime scene as well as the Bureau of Criminal Investigation for the state. The other guy is Mike Mathis, who is one of our investigators. He came to us from the Springdale Police Department. He retired as a police chief over there. And Mike and I went to the Police Executive Leadership College way back in 2001 together. And he always told me the job that I enjoyed the most was being the investigations commander. I liked that more than administration. So when he was getting ready to retire, I called him up and I said, "Would you like to be an investigator again?" He jumped at the chance, lucky for us and lucky for Greenhills. Yeah. His skills are probably the best I've seen in investigating, and he and Brian just bring a lot to the table. And I think that's what makes us, in addition to the good patrol staff we have and the good supervision, the kind of police department that we are. I would put that department up against anyone, and it's not just me saying so. Every year since 2007, we've been assessed by the Commission on Accreditation, which is an international group. And it's not just a good old boys network. They come in and they hold your feet to the fire. And we've made it through every time on our inspections, and I think that puts us head and shoulders above the rest. And you mentioned community support, and that's just so vital. When I first got here, I had asked whether or not the department had ever done a Citizens Police Academy. And the answer was no, they'd never tried that before. So we put out some flyers and we ran our first police academy. And the good thing about that was that we went through the academy. We got such interested folks that participated, but it was the first time we did it here. I was a little leery of running it. And for example, we gave them shirts that said Greenhills Police Citizens Police Academy. So one of the things that I wanted to do was get those shirts out to them, but I thought, I wonder if I'd get criticized for spending taxpayer dollars for these shirts. So we charged them like 15 or 20 bucks each for the shirts. After the academy was over, I had a gentleman come to my office. He didn't tell me what he wanted, that had been in the academy, and he handed me $1,000 check. And he said, I don't want anybody to ever have to pay for one of those shirts or a community program again. That was the inception of our community fund. That fund has always had a balance of usually in excess of $5,000. Those are all donations from citizens in Greenhills who have wanted us to be able to help residents who are in need or to have community programs. And the generosity in the Greenhills community is just outstanding. I've never seen anything like it. And I will certainly miss the residents, but they're going to be in really good hands.
When you made the change from Hamilton to Greenhills, were there things that you did not expect that surprised you?
Yes. As the police chief in Hamilton, I had a staff consisted of 2 captains, an administrative assistant, and a secretary, which meant that to do the job effectively, delegated a lot of work. In Greenhills, I had a lieutenant and a clerk, which meant that I'm the guy that pays the bills. Lieutenant Ward normally covers doing the payroll, but I had an administrative assistant in Hamilton that wrote the policy, and then I would make modifications to it. In Greenhills, I became the policy writer again, which I had done coming up the ranks in Hamilton, so I was familiar with doing that. But it was a little more hands-on than Hamilton was, which was fine. I enjoyed that very much. What I initially thought when I got here, as a patrol supervisor in Hamilton, sergeant or lieutenant, you basically spend an hour in the office, you have roll call, the officers go out on the street, you have a little more paperwork, then you go out and supervise the calls. So if there's an armed robbery or a difficult call, you'll usually go to the scene of that call. Then towards the last hour of the shift, you come in, you review the paperwork that's been done, and go home. So I thought Greenhills would be a lot like that. I thought I'd have a couple of hours of paperwork during the day and be able to be out in the street more. I've always got a project, it seems like. There's always something to write, something to do, something to change. So it's been more administrative work than what I thought. I thought I'd have more time to patrol, and I've always treasured those moments where I just get to go out and ride around the beautiful streets of Greenhills.
Is there a project that you are the most happy you got to be a part of?
Boy, that's a
You
good
don't have
question.
to pick one.
Yeah, because there's just so many. I think getting the staff in place that we have right now, I felt that I wasn't quite there yet a couple of years ago. We had some personnel changes, and I think we've got the right people in the right place. There's a management book called Good to Great, and it's written by a guy by the name of Jim Collins. And what he says is important, managing any organization, whether it's police or otherwise, is to, number one, get the right people on the bus and get them into the right seats. As of right now, we've got the right people on the bus and they're in the right seats. So it's a good time for me to make an exit. So we weren't there, but I think that's an achievement that I'm very happy that has worked out. And I can just tell you, and you may sense a theme here, but Ann Ward, Tony Patton, Carl Holbrook, Mike Mathis, Brian Johnson, Andy Moore, right on down to our newest hire, which is Daniel Warman. These guys are all superstars, and they serve our community really well, and I know that I'm leaving the community in excellent shape, and we're bringing in a police chief that is going to just continue with that excellence. So I'm very happy about that.
What will you miss? I mean, you won't have time to miss because I'm sure that your new employers, your granddaughters, will be keeping you very busy. But when you have time to think about it, what are you going to miss about being in Greenhills?
It's funny, just on that note, I had a conversation with my wife. I said, I have the lawyers working on redoing the contract. I'll be picking up cleaning half the rooms and, bringing the cat his water upstairs, that kind of thing. So, there's a lot of thought being given into my new duties. But
you won't have a lot of extra time after all. Okay, got it.
I will miss, and this is a standard answer, I suppose, but it's so true. I'll miss the people. Every day I get to hang out with Ann Ward and Vonda Sequoia. They're the two that are in the office with us during the day, and I will miss all the officers. I will miss Yvonne Kovac, Deb Heimer, and Brenda and Marianne in the office across the hall. But it's a good, cohesive team, and I will miss them because they're all great people.
So I'm thinking about little kids watching that think, I don't know, do I want to be a police officer when I grow up? They see them on TV. It looks very exciting. The police officers you saw on TV as a teenager didn't match what you thought your dad did until that day you got to ride along.
Yeah.
What would you say to them? How should they get ready? What do they need to know?
They need to be as open-minded as possible because we deal with people of different faiths, different colors, different beliefs, some that like us, some that hate us. And you have to dive through all that and treat people as you would want to be treated. And it's a difficult thing because you really have to broaden your perspectives on things and accept things that you maybe personally don't think is right. But it's very important, particularly when people don't trust police officers today, for them to see us as human beings, that we're moms and dads, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, just like in their family. And I just don't see, and I know I see the news and I see where a police officer does something awful. And that's, I think, typical that it's called the news because it's very unusual for that to happen. Police officers deal with thousands and thousands of encounters every day, and they're handled flawlessly. They're handled with empathy. I know that our officers, one that I can think of in particular, Andy Moore, he stopped a young lady for speeding, or maybe it was driving under suspension. I can't remember what it was, but it was an offense. And she broke down in tears, and she told him some of her life story, which was some really terrible things that she had gone through. I believe it involved maybe some addictions and different things. And he tore up the ticket. He voided it, which is pretty unusual, and it came to my attention. And I asked him about the story, and he said, she just really didn't need that right now. She needed a break. So about a month later, I get a call from her mom, and she said, I wanted to let you know that one of your officers saved my daughter's life, that she was contemplating suicide. And after your officer talked to her and gave her a break and told her some options and some things that she could do to help herself, she's completely turned around and he saved her life. That's the kind of things we do on a daily basis that just make me happy that we have good quality people in our line of work.
Do you think the fact that he felt that you would support that decision made it possible for him to do that?
Absolutely. I'm the one thing, I had a guy come in and complain about somebody that was parked in front of his house, and I explained parking laws to him. And he said, and in Greenhills, we're parking challenged because, it was built in 1938 and people had one or no cars. Now they have 3 or 4 cars, so there's never enough parking. And he told me, he said, policing and enforcement is all black and white. You're either right or you're wrong. And I said, policing is all about gray. It's not at all black and white because sometimes somebody may park for a way temporarily because they're in a wheelchair, they have a walker or whatever, and we have to look at the totality of circumstances. I mean, honestly, we don't enforce parking to the letter of the law. As long as people can get by on the sidewalk, we'll let them slide just a little bit because parking is such a challenge. Yeah. And I know it's something that the municipal manager and council have looked at. They've tried to come up with different alternatives. There aren't any easy answers to that situation, but that's one thing that I have learned over the years, that to do a good job in policing, it's not black and white. It's very much gray. You have to look, and sometimes you're going to make individual choices. And as long as you're trying to do the right thing, it's going to turn out okay.
If someone's looking for what are the most exciting stories that you've had in police work in your time in either Hamilton or Greenhills, do you have any that you would share when your grandkids get older or they have those kind of questions?
In Hamilton, as a young patrol officer, I arrested murderers, violent criminals, rapists, and had to deal with that on a regular basis. So there wasn't just one, there was many. Okay. In Greenhills, I think really there was only one that was, we've had some shootings and stabbings and different things, but there was one that was a very difficult situation, and it involved a veteran with some PTSD issues, and he snapped one night because of something horrible that had happened to some of his former soldiers. And we had to get his wife and kids out of the house. And we thought that he had climbed up on the roof. He had automatic weaponry at his disposal. And so we were very concerned for the neighborhood. I remember that Ann Ward was in my office calling different residents, getting them to shelter in place so they weren't in the line of fire in case there was a shot. And there was an accidental discharge that actually could have hurt somebody, but we got them out of harm's way first. But I remember that we thought that he was still in or on the house, and I was with another officer a couple of doors down in a dark area in between houses, and here comes our guy. And he was a very well-trained soldier, and I told him, gave him some commands, and he was very cooperative. I thanked him later because we got him into a veterans court, and we got him some help, and he's fine now, and he's a good citizen and a good man. But he had a bad night, and it all worked out well, and I thanked him that nobody was hurt, and he said, I wouldn't have done that, but I think he was distraught enough that I don't know what would have happened. But it was one of those situations that was very challenging at the time, but because of some good police work, it worked out well.
And listening to their stories, which is what happened with the woman who was stopped, too.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely seeing that as a theme, is listening to the stories of the officers and of the people you're working with.
Empathy is a very important quality in our line of work.
I asked about your favorite programs, and there isn't one. There's just a lot of them, and they all include food.
I enjoyed the Citizens Police Academy. That was fun. And by the way, we still encourage anyone who would be interested to sign up for that. Because we'd like to run another one, and I'm sure that Chief Howarth will do that because he's done it where he is now in Delhi. So we'd love to run another one of those, and that's so interesting for the residents because we have as much fun as the people do. We do scenarios. We'll let them be the police officers, and we're the bad guys. We let them do pursuit driving in a driving simulator. We let them do firearms shooting in a firearms simulator. So it's really an eye-opener, and that was probably one of my more fun community programs. So I hope we'll get to do that again. Maybe they'll come and let me be a scenario player.
If there was the chance to just leave some comments and some instruction behind for the people in your department, for the new people that come hired on, that you didn't get to pick, what would you leave them? What are your words of wisdom you would leave them with?
Approach all situations with an open mind.
Okay.
Oftentimes, I'll hear that, it's just a false alarm, when we get an alarm drop. Well, from my time in Hamilton, I responded to bank alarms that weren't false alarms. So I know that there's always a chance. And I think you always have to be prepared and be ready for the unexpected. It's a violent society today. I worry about our police officers as they make calls. We try and teach them to be as prepared as possible. When I was growing up and when you were in school, I don't think either of us gave any thought to a shooter coming into our schools. Mm-hmm. But today, that's a very real situation. So we have to prepare for that. So I think that in nonviolent situations, officers need to be as open-minded as they can and listen and try and come up with a solution that's the best one. Sometimes it's an arrest and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a referral to mental health. And we have gotten more and more advanced in working with mobile crisis teams and with the UC hospital that deals with psychiatric emergencies. So those are also alternatives. But the other things, I worry about our officers every time that they make a call that has the potential for them to be harmed. So as you see, police officers used to look like this on an everyday basis, and now we've got the external body armor. We carry additional weapons that we didn't used to have to carry when I started out, but it's all in an effort to keep them safe because one of my big jobs is to make sure they go home safe at the end of their tour of duty.
Well, I really want to thank you for taking some time to come in and talk to us a little bit. And anytime you have more stories that you want to capture or share or anything like that, I hope you'll remember Waycross. We have loved all of the time that you spent here in our studio.
Well, I have enjoyed working with you in particular and the staff here in general and the community in Greenhills. But after 47 years of wearing a police uniform, it's time for me just to be a grandpa. I'm truly looking forward to that. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, my dad was a lieutenant. The very best promotion I ever got was when I was promoted to lieutenant. He was still alive. He wasn't in the best of health, but he was around to pin that badge on me. And that was a great promotion, but this one is probably the best.